Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming today to our webinar to the Creative Europe Culture Office. We're presenting an information event today on the 2 new Erasmus Plus calls from the Erasmus Plus programme published by the European Commission. And the 2 calls are in response to the COVID pandemic and the significant impact it's had on both the provision and delivery of education and training and youth policies, but also on the creative and culture sectors, obviously here in Ireland, but across Europe. So we'll be looking at the Culture Office, myself and Katie Lowry will be looking at the overview of this call in the broader context of Creative Europe and the European Commission overall, their response to the pandemic. But in this role as the Culture Office, we promote the call, we obviously give advice. And as I said, we'll be looking at the overall overview of the calls, but the main national agency for these calls is Lergos. So we'll talk a little bit later on about how to follow on your contact for information and advice following this event. So we'll talk again, just looking at our kind of schedule for today. We will look at, as I said, the Culture Office and our role. We will look more at the specifics of the call, how to apply, who can apply, what to apply for, how much. We'll be looking at examples of other Irish projects and partners with different projects, either live or in the past within the Erasmus Plus programme. We will also be learning live from an Irish partner, Ulla Hokkanen, from Galway Community Circus, who will talk us through some of their Erasmus Plus projects. They have been successful in 30 plus and have coordinated a lot of them themselves. So it would be great to hear on the ground from the horse's mouth from themselves how it has benefited their organisation and the kind of tips to approach the Erasmus Plus programme. We will have Leona Cully here, we do have her here, who will moderate our questions today. She's our Digital Marketing and Communications Manager in Creative Europe desk. And we really encourage you to engage, to ask questions. You can start from the get-go, but we do ask you to do it through the chat function. We will respond to you and moderate, and then there'll be questions, a lot of time at the end for questions. We'll also follow up today's session with an email with a copy of our PowerPoint presentation, links to the webinar, recorded webinar, and other details relevant to the call. So without further ado, I will pass you on to Katie, who will talk through the Culture Office role.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many of you here and many familiar names or faces. So probably most of you know what we do, but we're the Creative Europe Desk Ireland Culture Office. We're funded by the European Commission as the national contact point for the EU Creative Europe programme. And our role is to really promote the programme here and provide information and advice to potential applicants. For this call, as many of you know, it's being managed directly by Lergos, who's the national authority for the Erasmus Plus programme. So our role is really, because this is a special call in the sense that it is really looking to have cross-sectoral collaboration between the arts and culture sectors and the education sectors, our role is to promote it directly to our sectors here in Ireland and assist Lergos in identifying potential applicants and project participants from our sector. So really we're here in the sense of kind of general advice and promotion, but for very specific technical help with your application, it is Lergos who will be handling that. The context of this call, like everything else in our lives at the moment, is the ongoing COVID-19 crisis. So the European Commission has really been scrambling in the past 6 months to come up with a series of kind of targeted financial responses to the crisis, recognizing that as here as in Europe, the cultural and creative sectors are certainly some of the worst hit by COVID. So what is happening now is obviously we're coming to the end of the current 7-year program, so they cannot introduce any new funding. So what they've had to do is really kind of scramble to find additional funding that can then be disseminated through existing funding programs. So we're here to talk about the money that is available under the Erasmus Plus program under strategic partnerships. So one thing that's really interesting, and another reason we wanted to do this event, is recognizing that what they're introducing now in terms of a COVID response will be carried over to the next program. So anything you're kind of developing or working on now for this call, even if it comes to the fact that you don't necessarily put in an application, there will be similar responses in the new program, which launches next year. So I've just highlighted some of the focus for the next programs, and these will be what will be called horizontal objectives in that they cross over the different funding programs. So whether it will be Erasmus, whether it will be Creative Europe, whether it will be Horizon 2020 or any of the research funds, you know, the idea of there's a real focus on digitization and in particular digital adaptations, an ongoing focus on gender equality, social inclusion, and increasingly now the idea of a green Europe. So we're just really flagging that. So, you know, anything you're developing now, bear in mind that, you know, this isn't your one shot at it. It will continue into the next program. Just hand back to Aoife now. Sorry, Aoife, I don't know if anyone else, but I can't hear you.
Sorry, excuse me. Can you hear me now? Yeah. So the two calls, as Katie said, the Erasmus Plus program, the European Commission has kind of funneled money into the program to help and assist with the COVID-19 pandemic. Just to flag as well that the Erasmus Plus program has always been open to the creative and culture sectors. As we see with Ulla and Galway Community Circus, there have been many projects in the past that have been creative and cultural. But with this particular one, I guess that the European Commission have added extra money and have really highlighted two calls that are very specific to the digital education sectors and to the partnerships for creativity, with more money, as I said, 2.5 million available to Irish organisations. So just to look at the aims of the two separate calls. First of all, the call for digital competencies. This will have partnerships that promote networking of institutions across the European Union, sharing of resources and expertise. It will help organizations manage the challenge, as we said, of the sudden shift to online and digital. So there will be collaboration with digital technology providers in education technologies. The focus will be on building capacity to implement online, blended and distant learning and teaching, to develop digital pedagogical competencies of educators, enable them to develop and deliver high quality digital content and inclusive digital education. And then the aims of the call for the partnerships for creativity is to stimulate European awareness, empower people of current and future generations to be successful, to be creative innovators in their local environment, to engage organizations in formal, informal and non-formal education with creative and culture sectors, to boost quality, innovation and recognition of youth work that support the creative potential of youths. And these projects could reinforce cross-sectoral cooperation with a focus on creativity, European citizenship and cultural awareness of all citizens. Social inclusion will happen with arts participatory and intercultural dialogue with education, training and youth stakeholders. And as we were saying there, the objectives or the aims of the calls reflect those focuses on intercultural dialogue, on reaching all cultural awareness to all citizens. So those priorities come across in the actual aims of the two calls. So who can actually apply? There is a very long list of varied types of organizations or groups that can apply, such as a school, an institute, an education center at any level, from preschool up to upper secondary education and including vocational, educational and adult education. Say a public or a private, a small, medium or large enterprise, which includes social enterprises, a public body at local or regional, national level, that could be your local authorities, or an intercompany training center, a cultural organization, library or museum, obviously your more cultural creative sector there, a body validating knowledge, skills and competencies acquired through non-formal and informal learning. So these are all, the full list will be on the Lergus link. We have sent out the link there to the Lergus page for all of the details, but obviously it's a huge amount of varied types of organizations and groups that can apply. So a strategic partnership is a partnership that is transnational and involves minimum of 3 organizations from 3 different program countries. There are no maximum number of participating organizations, but just to flag that the budget overall for project management and implementation is capped. So that cap would be equal to 10 participating organizations. So I guess there's no real point in having 20 or so partners, because your project management is capped. You wouldn't be able to, it wouldn't be feasible. So we thought we'd look at different partnerships in the digital and creative sectors, just to give you an idea of the ones that have worked in the past. So SCOPE is skills recognition, capacity building and professional education, which is a 5-country partnership building skills among third sector staff and volunteers, and it's led by the Irish organisation The Wheel, which is great to see them leading. There's the Reevaluating Digital Technology to Enhance Learning, a 6-country partnership focusing on effective use of digital technology in vocational classroom, and that's led by Cork Education and Training Board. And this is a resource we thought would be of interest, how Erasmus Plus can be a change maker. So this is a blog post from a teacher in a national school in Galway, just to give the experience of how it affected and was a great change to their workplace. And then looking at other Irish organisations as partners within the creativity partnerships, Wired Cross, a pan-European wide community participation project revolving around the art of tight wire walking, led by Galway Community Circus. And as we said, we'll hear from Ulla Hokkanen from Galway Community Circus in a moment. We looked at the creative inclusion in adult education, which helps adults with learning disabilities access creative and inclusive learning, which was partnered with COPE Foundation. And we thought this was an interesting example. Their objective was for innovation and exchange of good practices on art education for adults with disability. They joined forces with organizations from Italy, from France, from Belgium, looking at the European policy framework around arts education and access for people with disabilities. Cork Institute of Technology was also a partner on that project, so it's an interesting one to look up. The developing how to develop creative partnerships in EU is another resource there, posted by Crooked House Theatre, and all these links are on the Lergus website. We can send you them on in our follow-up email, and I'll hand you over to Katie for the activities.
Thanks, Aoife. So I just have listed and kind of the exhaustive list of activities of what you can do, and I'll go through some of them. But I just wanted to say, you know, the key here and this probably holds true with any funding, certainly with European funding, is your first step is actually to look at what you are doing right now as an organization, what you are planning to do, and seeing if you can identify crossover with the activities listed here. The thing about the Erasmus Plus and certainly the strategic partnerships is that there's a very broad range of projects that are funded under this at different stages. some people, you could definitely see this as, you know, a developmental award in some ways. So, you know, you're really looking to see, and I think in some ways the context of COVID is a lot of organizations, every organization has had to look at their ongoing work and make adaptations and look at the ways in which they can continue to do the work they want to do in these challenging times. So I think the idea of Irish organizations doing this, you will find peers across Europe doing the same thing. The thing to look at with Erasmus Plus and to bear in mind is you might have a very small scale project. You aren't necessarily, you know, these projects last a maximum of 2 years. So it's not necessarily that during the lifetime of the project, it will have a huge, you know, impact, you know, a broad impact, but you will be looking at developing methodologies and ways of working that can perhaps have an ongoing impact after the project is finished. So I'll just kind of take you through some of the activities for partnerships for creativity. So projects will look at developing skills and competencies to reinforce all aspects of creativity in non-formal and formal education. Projects will look to accelerate the digital transformation of the production and consumption of cultural and creative works. Again, this could be one that could be a very broad one that crosses all aspects of your project. You know, your activities will be seen to promote active EU citizenship and social inclusion. You will look at nurturing and fostering entrepreneurship within the cultural and creative domains. Your project could produce learning tools and resources and materials and courses that, again, can be shared across your sector, across Europe. Then we also have, and this is really key, and this is one that you could see broadens out the relevance of this call to the broader arts and culture sector here. Activities that look at artistic and cultural initiatives with an educational dimension are aimed at raising awareness on societal issues and European matters. And these can include theatre plays, exhibitions, music performances, etc. And then this is one that's really interesting. The last two here, and we'll hear from Ulla, is that, you know, the idea is you could be developing partnerships or networks or activities that then could lead to a larger or, you know, an additional European project in the future. So you could, you know, you could be looking and have certain contacts across Europe, and you're interested in working you know, together on perhaps a Creative Europe cooperation project. And this could be an opportunity for you to develop that network, develop that partnership, and develop collaborative ways of working together. So activities that seek to establish or reinforce existing or new networks, and then also transnational mobility activities that promote learning opportunities in creative spaces and cultural heritage site, including creative residencies. Now, the caveat here for this, funding strand is obviously at the moment, physical meetings are really limited to, you know, the country. So you could have physical meetings here in Ireland, but then obviously for transnational activities or meetings, those are to happen virtually at the moment. So here we go, activities for digital education readiness. And again, we have a very broad-based one that's looking at strengthening cooperation and networking between organizations at European level. Testing or implementing innovative practices in the field of education, training, and youth. Activities that facilitate the recognition and validation of knowledge, skills, and competencies acquired through formal, non-formal, and informal learning. And this is kind of key because I think there are a few representatives from local authorities here. Activities of cooperation between regional authorities to promote the development of education, training, and youth systems and their integration in actions of local or regional development. Activities to better prepare and deploy the education and training of professionals for equity, diversity, and inclusion challenges in the learning environment. So you can see here there's a lot of scope for developing activities that will have an ongoing benefit to our sectors and our work here in Ireland through cooperation at European level. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the budget, and we always look with some envy on Erasmus Plus from the Creative Europe program, because they have a certain level of what they call flat rate financing. So Aoife mentioned it earlier. So this is essentially a large portion of the budget will be calculated automatically as a flat rate. So under this call, the maximum grant available is 300,000, and this is for projects that can last up to a maximum of 2 years. And again, and I think Ulla touches on this in her presentation, because she has been involved in a whole range of scales of Erasmus Plus projects. So this can be a very simple, small-scale cooperation between three partners, and then it can obviously be a very sophisticated, large-scale project. And the budget and the cost and your activities will reflect this. So the main budget line for this, and which I said is an automatic calculation based on how many organizations are involved. So this would be what they call project management and implementation. So obviously it's your staff fee plus the activities related to implementing your project. So these costs for implementation include planning costs, communication between partner costs, small scale materials, virtual cooperation, your local project activities, promotion and dissemination. So again, I don't want to go into a huge amount of detail because L'Ergus will do this in their application workshop, but that's just a broad overview. And then costs related to transnational project meetings, not as relevant for this call because again, that will be virtual, but there are costs associated with this. And then if your project is larger scale, additional costs would relate to some of the what they call intellectual outputs, so research and publication costs, dissemination, teaching and training and learning activities. So I'm going to just take a break here from this, and I'm going to call Ulla in. So let me just bring up Ulla's slides now. There we go.
Brilliant.
Thanks so much. I'm going to turn myself off. So I just wanted to say, Aoife's touched on this, but we're delighted to have Ulla Hokkanen here from Galway Community Circus. She is our star European performer in this context because she's done over 30 Erasmus Plus projects. I think you said 17 as a lead coordinator, which is just amazing. She's currently a partner on the Creative Europe project Wires Cross, based in Galway. And I think some of the work developing that did happen through Erasmus Plus. The other thing, which again, Aoife touched on, is that this isn't your only opportunity to, if you are here as a cultural and creative organization, to get involved in Erasmus Plus. And I think Ulla has had this conversation before, you know, the frustration of people not recognizing what you can actually do through this funding. So it's really great to have you here, because whether or not, you know, you end up applying as an organization to this call, if you're an arts or culture organization here, you mightn't apply for this call, but we want you to have it in your mind for future calls, because the next program is going to be launched for next year. It's going to run for 7 years, and there certainly will be scope within that for you. So I'm just going to turn myself off now and hand it over to Ulla.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Katie and Aoife and Leona and the whole team at the Creative Europe desk. I'm really happy to be here today to share a little bit about our experience in Erasmus Plus, and I really hope that there will be something beneficial for everybody who is listening in what we have experienced. So yeah, as the ladies were saying, my name is Ulla Hokkanen. I'm the Executive Creative Director of Galway Community Circus. And we are the Ireland's flagship organization for youth and social circus. So we use circus art as a tool to create social change. And as mentioned, we have gone a bit mad with European collaboration. I suppose there's many reasons for it. I mean, I personally myself first came to Ireland because of Erasmus Plus, when it was just a university exchange program back in the day, and our team is very international. So that would be one reason why it's like second nature for us to collaborate with international partners. But also, I think circus as an art form and as a sector is very international, and people are really used to traveling and moving around and touring internationally. So our team here in Galway is really a big reflection on that, and we connect a lot with our European partners. Also, I have to say that circus and especially youth and social circus, what we do is a quite small sector here in Ireland. It's growing, but it's a small sector, whereas in mainland Europe, in Scandinavia, Canada, and many other parts of the world, it's a really established, large cultural sector. So again, for us, we are quite ambitious in wanting to develop our work and want to provide the best opportunities for our members and our audiences. So we want to look also beyond Ireland and learn from others, and also share our learning with everybody else. So the three kind of key areas how we use Erasmus Plus in our work would be, firstly, mobility of young people. So we want to take our youth circus members to visit other circus schools and meet other young people who do circus. We want them to know that they're not alone, who, you know, in the west coast of Ireland, who is interested in this art form. There are lots of other young people out there. And through these exchanges, they can, of course, develop new skills, circus skills, but all kinds of personal and social skills. They can establish their own networks, and they're already doing that. And also it can, and it has been providing them international performance opportunities. Secondly, one of the key areas is professional development. So Ireland is one of the few countries in Europe who doesn't yet have a professional circus school. So if you want to take part in long-term professional training, high quality programs, you might want to do that outside Ireland, or work with international partners to develop a training course that Irish artists and circus teachers can access. So this, of course, it's professional development. It's, again, artists being able to establish their own networks. A lot of them would work internationally as well. So this would support their employability, but also Erasmus Plus can actually provide employment for them. And then thirdly, which is also a very important area, would be capacity building on an organizational level. So through Erasmus Plus, we have taken part in Erasmus in like research projects, in development projects to build new methodology, to do job shadowing, internships, to learn from other organizations, sharing best practice, and build the organizational capacity of Galway Community Circus. Today, we're really focusing on what they call the strategic partnership project. So this is the key action 2 in the Erasmus Plus project. So as Aoife and Katie were mentioned, yes, we've done a lot of different Erasmus Plus projects, over 30, and 7 of them have been these strategic partnership projects. 3 out of the 7 we have. No, 4 out of the 7 we've actually coordinated at Galway Community Circus, and then 3 we've been partners. To give you an idea of what kind of projects these have been, so 2 of them were really focusing on supporting young artists and youth leadership. This was with partners from Belgium and Czech Republic. The first part of the project was 2 years long, and now we are in the middle of a 3-year project where a group of young people from these 3 countries come together multiple times over the period of 2 to 3 years, and they develop a methodology and a model for this junior leadership scheme for the youth circus sector. And while they do this, they develop their own circus teaching skills and leadership skills. So that's been really fantastic. 2 of the 7 projects have been a partnership with universities. So the first project was started in 2014. It was a 2-year-long project, and now we're in the middle of the second part of the 3-year-long project again, called Circus Plus Plus. And this is a cooperation between 3 universities, 6 circus schools, and an umbrella network for the sector. And together we are developing the world's first degree course, a curriculum for a BA course for youth and social service teachers. So it's hugely exciting. And I know Patrick from NUI Galway. I think Patrick is maybe online listening as well. So NUI Galway are our local partners in this project, working together with the international universities and service schools on this. Thirdly, what has been a big focus for our work in the last 5 years or so, 4 or 5 years, is the project that was mentioned there earlier called Wires Crossed. So it's a partnership with the Galway 2020 European Capital of Culture, and with different circus schools around Europe and also universities, and it's focusing on funambulism, which is high wire walking, the art of high wire walking, like you can see in the picture. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in detail, and just to give you an idea of how Erasmus Plus and Creative Europe have both supported us in this adventure. So all these strategic partnerships that we've done, they've been lasting between 2 and 3 years per project, and each of them have had between 3 and 10 partners. As I mentioned, the partners are mostly circus schools like us, some of them very small organizations to very, very big ones. Other partners have been universities and also these kind of sectoral networks. But Erasmus Plus, as Katie mentioned, really you can include all kinds of partners. We've kind of stuck a little bit more within our sector and with the academic partners, but you could have a whole range of different kind of partners in your projects. So this slide is to give you an idea of how we used Erasmus Plus to build a methodology for training, and then to build and provide professional development opportunities for artists, leading to public participation, and then we also were successful in a Creative Europe application, where we took on another element of a new focus on supporting professional emerging artists in developing the performance aspect of the high wire walking. So really, how Galway Community Circus, I suppose, have used both Erasmus Plus and the Creative Europe project to go from the methodology building to performance over a period of number of years. So with Wires Crossed, we started in 2017, where we run the very first strategic partnership project with 3 countries, Ireland, Belgium, and Germany. And we trained the first group of 12 circus artists in how to teach high wire walking to amateurs, to members of the public. This group of 12 continued to a second project. We were again successful through the Irish National Agency, and we were able to provide this level 2 training, where the group of 12 trainers went higher on the wires and also deeper in their methodology. So between these two strategic partnership projects, these 12 professionals were able to take part in 8 weeks of professional development over a period of 2.5, 3 years. Then the partnership expanded, and a new project of the level 1 with a new group of 12 started in 2018 with another strategic partnership. This particular one was focused on how to work with people who are recovering from trauma and how high wire walking can be used in this kind of context. And then a third group of 12 new artists, circus teachers, started the project in 2019. And this was called Wires Crossed Mind Your Balance. And again, this was funded by the Irish National Agency, or through the Irish National Agency. And this particular project was focused on youth mental health. Youth mental health is kind of like the recurrent theme in all of our Wires Crossed partnerships, but this was particularly focused on mindfulness and high wire walking, and giving professionals practical tools in how to work with young people in this way. Then in 2019, our Creative Europe project started. So these trainers that had now taken part in this professional training and knew how to teach these skills, they were working in all the different partnering circus schools, providing local workshops. And this public participation was taken into the Creative Europe project, and a new element, which was the support for emerging artists in how to create a professional show, was brought on. So we are currently working with a director and a choreographer from Spain, who the premiere was supposed to happen this past summer, but it will happen next year, all going well. And it will combine the professional ensemble together with the local amateur performers. So it's really exciting. And this also includes academic research on the impact of funambulism and what it does to your brain, or the positive impact. So fingers crossed we are able to have a kind of the Irish highlight event next July here in Galway, where we are hosting a big Erasmus Plus youth exchange of 60 young people coming from all these different partnering countries, and our Creative Europe residency and the Creative Europe Irish premiere performance, and where we have a big spectacle of hundreds of people walking across the River Corrib and the Claddagh Basin on high wires. So I suppose our work won't stop there. So really the big objective behind this, the event is important, but it's not just about the event. It's to create a legacy for European network for funambulism, to build capacity of youth and social service sector, to introduce this new participatory activity that is really highly engaging for the participants, and then also to provide employment for circus artists and teachers. So why do I think that Erasmus Plus is a good program for arts organizations? I think there are many reasons. As Katie was mentioning there, Erasmus Plus is a really big priority for the European Union. So it's a large portfolio, and it's a really brilliant opportunity for this cross-sectoral cooperation, whether it's with the formal or the non-formal education sector, youth, sports, community sector, and so on. And I think for us, because it's very natural for the kind of work that we do, it's a really great program to connect the arts to social objectives. And I think, as mentioned, it can really complement the Creative Europe program really well as well. So it can support the methodology building new models of working and skill development to perhaps be ready for Creative Europe program. Erasmus Plus can provide training for, or funding rather, for, as mentioned, for training for individuals, job shadowing, for study visits. So if there's an organization out there that is really inspiring for you, that you maybe follow online, it can be an opportunity for you to get to know their work better, whether it's a short visit or a kind of longer project to share best practice. It provides funding for hosting and sending volunteers, again, for short-term or long-term projects. At Galway Community Circus, we've been hosting Erasmus Plus volunteers for the last 8 or 9 years. And every year we have 4 young circus artists, circus teachers who stay with us for 11 months. So that's been really huge for us. And then through these strategic partnerships, it can provide these kind of long-term capacity building opportunities for your organization to develop what you do. And then finally, it provides funding for events like exchanges or what they call solidarity projects as well. So that could be interesting. There are many deadlines every year, so most of these strands have a couple of opportunities, usually 3 opportunities to apply. So that's a good thing. And I think that the process for reporting, they're trying to make it as streamlined as possible. Of course, there's a lot of things to kind of get familiar with the Erasmus Plus kind of language and the different online platforms that are used, but the beautiful thing is that once you do it once, the next one is a lot easier. And finally, just to share some tips that I think could hopefully be helpful. So kind of referring to what Katie was mentioning there, to really think strategically, map all the things that your organization might need. For example, do you need volunteers? Do you need staff training, skill development? Do you need new methodologies or models of working? And could you combine all of these or a few of these into one application? It's really important to have good partners. This, of course, it's said always, but to have partners that you know, that you trust. And I definitely don't recommend any kind of last minute panic partnerships 5 minutes before the deadline. Anyway, 5 minutes before the deadline, it's impossible. The application does take probably a couple of weeks for you to build, but I would say it would probably be a good idea to start as a partner and then coordinate when you already have an experience of previous project. That's what we did, at least. And also what we did, which I think is a good way, is to first start with a smaller project and then build a bigger one once you are familiar with the program. I mean, as mentioned, the size of these projects can vary a lot. The smallest Erasmus Plus project that we've taken part in was €5,000 budget, and the largest 370,000. So there's a big difference. Always ask LERGAS, the National Agency for Advice. They're really brilliant, and that's what they're there for. No more than the Creative Europe desk here. The guys are really helpful. Don't underestimate the administrative work, but don't let that stop you. I remember when before we started doing Erasmus Plus projects, a couple of people were saying that it's too much work, don't go near it. But I think actually it's the application and the reporting, it's quite logical. So if the objective for your project makes enough sense, if the final outcome is something that is really valuable for your organization and the people who benefit from it, then I think the administrative work is absolutely worth it. And on that as well, especially if you have a longer project, maybe 2 or 3 year project, report, fill in the reports as you go, as the project happens, because you might not remember everything that happened 2 or 3 years ago. And also because the budget depends on how many people actually traveled, or now with COVID-19 it's a little bit different, but how many people took part. So the budget may change throughout the project as well. So it's really important to keep an eye on that. One thing that unfortunately when we started Erasmus Plus and what's a challenge at the moment is that accommodation in Ireland has become increasingly more expensive. So hosting people within the Erasmus Plus projects, it can be a challenge. It's doable, but in bigger cities, you have to find accommodation partners that are within the budget. So with that, I think it's a really good idea to talk to other local nonprofits who do Erasmus Plus projects and maybe get advice from them for this kind of local logistics. Like, for example, we have been renting a house with Youth Work Ireland here in Galway for our volunteers, and that's been brilliant for both organizations and for the volunteers. And finally, just go for it. I mean, I know COVID-19 times, international travel is more difficult. It's a challenge, but I think it's really, really important for us to continue to work internationally, to look outside our own communities and our own towns, cities, and countries, and to learn from each other and to share and to show our young people that there's a whole world out there. So that's what I wanted to share. Really, there's my email address on our website as well. If anybody has any questions afterwards, and I know that we're gonna take some questions later. So thanks again so much, Katie and Aoife. I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Hi, Ulla. Thank you. That was such a brilliant presentation. So informative. I think you really touched on everything actually that we needed to hear, or we needed participants to hear. And thanks for everyone sending in your questions. We've just got 2 more short enough slides, and then we'll get to your questions. Katie's flicking through our presentation to get to the slides. Anyway, really great, Ulla. Thanks a million. We couldn't have, you're just the best person to listen to, because obviously you've so much experience. So just looking at the timeline and the process from here, so we recommend, even before you kind of go to any of the application workshops, I think it would be really good to have a good read through the Erasmus Plus program guide and the corrigendum document, just to get familiar with what this program and what these 2 calls are actually about, and just to see if they kind of suit you, or they make sense to you and your organization and what you want to do. The deadline for the application is the 29th of October at 11 a.m. And like Creative Europe applications, you mustn't put your application in any later. I don't think it will be accepted. So just keep an eye on that. But the project start dates would be to start between January and March in 2021, and then they must be completed by the end of December 2023. And as we were saying, all your applications will be made through the EU Funding and Opportunities portal. So check if your organization is registered. There's the link there, so you can have it then when we send on the PowerPoint. So you must be registered on the Erasmus Plus database. And from there, you register for an EU login. You will need this for the portal itself for your application form, and then sign up, eventually sign up to the application workshop. I know Largus as well have other workshops following on from that for the different calls. So just if you could keep an eye on their website, we've sent the link in there into the chat. You'll see when those dates are. And just some final thoughts there. I think what Ulla was saying really was really interesting and important is what does your organization need now and going forward? So what kind of are you looking to achieve? Would you like to develop different types of methodologies? Would you like to, increase your capacity, your skills, and maybe you need volunteers? There are areas that your organization could be looking into at the moment, and kind of areas that you need to fulfill so that you can complete activities that you would like to complete. And also, as Katie was saying at the beginning, all organizations have had to adapt to COVID and will have to probably adapt a little bit more. We're looking potentially at this for definitely another few months, if not a year. So organizations are continuously adapting, which is just unfortunate, but that is the case. But I suppose in that sense, you've already started some sort of ways of working through like the digitization already anyway, and potentially your organization works in areas of certain areas of education. It works in areas of social inclusion. It works with adults with disabilities. There's all areas, or works in sustainability and green approaches. So all of these areas you could have been kind of advancing in, developing in already, that you can then apply to the Erasmus plus these calls. But I guess as well, in saying that, also assess your organization's capacity and whether you have the capacity at the moment. So that's very important, because you could be pushing yourself to do something, quite beyond your organization's capacity to date. But then again, we were saying think longer term plans for your organization in relation to other European funding or European projects. So this could be very much a test of different areas that you want to work in, and then you could then develop on from that towards a European cooperation project or partnership. Also assess your local and European context that you have maybe already, or other kind of partners that you have maybe been in contact with, or that you are you look up to, or you would like to be in partnerships. So assess what you kind of have on the ground already. And then again, your local and regional partnerships are really important. As Ulla was saying, she's working with NUI Galway, and there's just a huge amount of partnerships that you can be working, that you might already be in contact with them already in Ireland. So keep in touch with us, the Culture Office, for general advice, as Katie was saying, for more technical advice on these Erasmus Plus calls. Then you will go to Lurgas. So thanks very much for listening to us today. We were delighted to have Ulla here with her expertise, and thanks, Leona, for your expertise. And if we have questions, we can answer them now, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's people there.
Okay, so we had a couple. So the first one was, to be eligible to apply, does the organisation need to be established for at least 2 years?
So I know that is a rule for a lead partner within the Creative Europe program. I haven't come across that within Erasmus Plus as a rule, so I don't imagine that it is. I would, again, I think because, certainly to do with the scales, and there's very small, more informal organizations involved. So I wouldn't imagine it's the case. Maybe just double check it with Lurgas. I saw, Leona, are there more? I just
Yeah, so someone asked, can a UK project partner be included?
Yeah, I think Rosie from the Creative Europe Desk UK Belfast is here and answer that. So hi, Rosie. Just to say that, yes, up until the end of this year, the UK are participating in this program. So yes, they can be included in this application.
Okay, and then for someone who's brand new to this, is there assistance in identifying potential partners in Europe?
I'm not sure, from my understanding, that Erasmus Plus or Lurgas operate a partner search kind of database, which the Culture Office does. So I think, again, that's more about probably going through your own contacts and networks there. Again, you could ask Lergus, they might have an informal system amongst themselves. I would say what we often say to people, and we can send the link, is there is an online database of all projects funded by the European Commission. So you could actually filter it out and search through strategic partnerships or Erasmus and maybe have a look at some active projects. And if there's anyone that interests you, you could make contact with them. But again, I don't think there's a formal database. Ulla's nodding. You might have something.
Can I just wanted to say maybe to join the Lergus newsletter, and they have these kind of contact, like a partnership finding events. So that would be a good way maybe to find partners. But I think if you go on the Lergus website and sign up for the various different newsletters that they send, they would post dates of any upcoming partner finding events.
Okay, thanks, Ulla. And this might be a question for you, Ulla. Someone asked about, you mentioned staff fees are eligible, but does it include any full-time, part-time and freelance staff costs?
I actually answered that in the chat, but really...
but for the video, yeah.
Yeah, so just to kind of say, I imagine it would be the same rule. The main thing for the European Commission is that you're not essentially double funding. So if you're allocating a full-time staff member to this project, that their time isn't kind of allocated to something else. So I know in the case of Creative Europe, if you were working 1 day a week on the Erasmus Plus project, you would back that up with a timesheet, and you're allocating their salary to that. I don't think that the European Commission would say what is the nature of employment. People come on and work freelance, people allocate full-time permanent staff. It's really up to yourself. It's just to be clear that you're not kind of double funding, so that if their time is allocated and funded within the context of the Erasmus Plus, their time isn't used for something else.
Okay, and then do you know when the next call after October is, and if the themes will be the same?
I think what we're saying there and what we're seeing is we're getting an idea, and no one has seen, the next programs have not been agreed within the EU Parliament. They're still trying to agree the budget. But what we can say is a lot of the themes around digitization, around social inclusion, around gender equality, around kind of the Green Europe agenda, they will be there. So I think you'll see a lot of kind of crossover, but we can't say for definite. And certainly with the timeline, again, we don't know. We don't really know. We imagine it will follow roughly what it is. So if there's 3, deadlines a year under Erasmus Plus for strategic partnerships, say it will be similar in the next program, but we wouldn't know dates yet.
Okay, and a question about, as an individual, presumably you need to find an organization to collaborate with?
Yeah.
And how would you register a group of youths or a youth group?
So again, that is a link we shared. There is an online link to register as an organization within for the Erasmus Plus program, and then you get an ID. So we can send that link afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it.
Okay.
Brilliant.
I guess one thing to say is just, people after we'll have the recording, we'll send the presentations, and we'll send all the links we mentioned and shared in the chat. But just to say, if anyone wants to follow up with us, please do. And just a huge thank you to Ulla for her presentation and taking part. So thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Okay, goodbye, everyone.
Okay,
Cheers.
bye. Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.